Cheers, friends. Wes here, checking in with a brand new episode of Beer Geek Photography. Hope everyone's doing well. As you can see from the title of this video, this is going to be about the 8 reasons I upgraded to the Canon 70D plus one extra feature that I love after 1 week of owning the camera. Just a quick back history, I bought a Canon T4i, their entry-level DSLR, a little over 2.5 years ago now. Been shooting with it. It's been my main camera for the past 2.5 years. I really love it. But I've always lusted after the Canon 70D, which was announced shortly after I bought my T4i. It's sort of the next step up, the next evolution in Canon DSLRs. It's still a crop sensor camera, but it introduced a lot more of pro-level kind of features for a DSLR. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Finally, the price on the 70D has come down to a point where it's a lot more affordable than it was when it was announced. I managed to pick up a refurbished one directly from Canon for $6.99 with a lens, which was really great. I saw on Black Friday they actually had it with 2 lenses for $6.99, which is even a better deal. I wish I would have waited a little while longer, but things happen. So anyway, I'm still happy I got the camera, and these are the 8 reasons that I really wanted to upgrade from the T4i to the Canon 70D. Reason number 1 is going to be the viewfinder. The T4i features a pentamirror viewfinder, which means to get the image from the lens up into the viewfinder, there's a series of mirrors inside of here that bounce the image up through to the viewfinder. Which works well. It's an okay system. It tends to be dimmer and there's less coverage. You only get about 95% of the actual image you're going to get through the pentamirror viewfinder on the T4i. And the 70D features a pentaprism viewfinder, which means your viewfinder is going to be brighter. It's going to be have more coverage. It's closer to the actual full image that you're actually going to get when you take a picture. So this is 98% coverage, so almost 100% of the full image size is going to be shown in the viewfinder. Not only is the viewfinder more coverage, it's brighter, it features a lot more customization as far as what you see in the viewfinder. There's a grid you can turn on and off to help you with composition. When you turn on and off specific focusing areas in the viewfinder, they actually turn on and off inside the viewfinder, whereas with the T4i, all the focusing points are lit up. They're just sort of in there no matter whether they're turned on or not. So it's just a lot more customization in the viewfinder. On the 70D, you get a lot more information, and it's a lot nicer to use. As I said, bigger, brighter. Shortly after the 70D was launched, I actually went to a Best Buy and held one up to my eye and was immediately had a sinking feeling in my stomach, because it was just a nicer experience to look through the viewfinder of the 70D than it is the T4i. So that was reason number 1. Reason number 2, in-camera JPEG processing. This is a feature where you can shoot RAW files, and then if you want a JPEG, you can create that inside the camera from any RAW file that's inside the camera. With the T4i, I found I was always shooting RAW plus JPEG. In case I ever wanted to pull a JPEG off quickly, it would be there for me, but it slows down the camera. It wastes space on your memory card to save 2 versions of every picture. So it's really nice with the 70D is I can just shoot RAW files all the time, and then if I do want a JPEG, I can instantly create one inside the camera and it's ready to go. So that's a really nice feature. I'm glad to be able to, only have to save a RAW file on the memory card. If I want a JPEG, I have it. I found that there was very few times where I actually needed to get a JPEG on the T4i, so that was 2 or 3 times during the 2.5 years I owned the cameras. To be able to have that feature and save space the majority of the time is a really handy feature. So that was reason number 2 for me to upgrade to the 70D. The next reason I chose to upgrade to the 70D is the faster shutter speed. The maximum shutter speed on the T4i is 1/4000th of a second. Whereas the 70D goes to 1/8000th of a second. So you get one more stop of shutter speed on that. You'll find that if you're trying to shoot outdoors in sunlight with a very fast lens like the nifty 50 Canon f1.8 lens, you're going to have a really hard time on a sunny day to be able to shoot wide open at f1.8 if you want to. I found there was a few times with the T4i that I was bouncing up against that 1/4000th shutter speed limit. So with the 1/8000th shutter speed limit, I should have a little more room to grow on that as far as the 70D goes. It's going to be really nice to have that available to me and really a really fast shutter speed, really stop things and be able to shoot wide open on a sunny day with the fast lens. So that was reason number 3. Reason number 4 for me to upgrade to the 70D is the built-in Wi-Fi on the 70D. The built-in Wi-Fi allows you to not only to transfer images from your camera to your smartphone, it also allows you to do remote shooting with your smartphone. So I could set the camera up on a tripod somewhere, connect to it with my phone, and be able to control all the functionality of the camera, be able to adjust my settings and take a picture right from my smartphone. It's a really handy feature. It's something I use a lot on my mirrorless camera, my OMD EM10. Don't have to carry a remote shutter release. You don't have to carry one of those infrared shutter releases. It's just all on your smartphone, which you're going to have with you pretty much all the time anyway. So built-in Wi-Fi, built into the camera. It's really nice. I wish it would work with the video functionality of the camera, but that's just not an option using the standard Canon software. There is some third-party software that allows you to do video over Wi-Fi. Maybe I'll talk about that in a future episode. So that's number 4, the number 4 reason why I upgraded to the 70D. Moving on to reason number 5 for me to upgrade to the 70D. The sensor inside the 70D is a little bit newer, a little bit more current, even though this camera is 2 years old at this point. It has better ISO performance. So when shooting indoors in low light, you're going to have to bump up your ISO to those higher numbers, and I find that the ISO performance on the 70D is a good bit better than the sensor in the T4i. This T4i sensor, it was already like a year old when I bought it. The sensor itself had been in camera bodies going back 3 years probably. It's that same 18 megapixel sensor that Canon used forever. So it's just an older sensor. It doesn't quite have the ISO performance of a newer sensor. So I'm finding that whereas with the T4i, the highest I really like to shoot at was at ISO 1600 and still get a very good image. I'm finding that with the 70D, I can shoot at 3200 and still get a very clean image. So that's really nice to have that extra ISO latitude, that extra low light capability. It's really nice to be able to have that, to be able to shoot indoors at higher ISOs and still get a really clean file. Definitely a nice newer processor, a few more megapixels as well. That's always nice if you ever need to crop. Moving on to reason number 7 for me to upgrade to the 70D is just the overall controls of the camera. The T4i is their entry-level DSLR, so you do have a sort of limited amount of controls on here. There's a pretty good amount of buttons here, but sometimes some features can take multiple button presses to sort of get in and change your ISO or change your switch between shutter speed and aperture. It takes an extra button press. Also, the grip on the T4i is a little bit shallow. It doesn't have a really nice grip on it. It's okay, but it's not great. Moving up to the 70D, you get a much deeper grip. It just feels a lot nicer in the hands to hold. You get a lot more controls on this camera. You get dedicated buttons for auto focus points, drive mode, ISO, metering mode. You get this extra LCD screen here on the top that gives you all your settings, so you can instantly just look down at the top of the camera and see all your settings right there, as well as you get the wheel on the back to adjust. You can set this to be your aperture, and on top can be your shutter speed or vice versa, or whatever you want to set those to. Just a lot more control in this camera with as far as buttons, and it's just a lot more of a pro level experience being able to quickly change a setting and know that there's a dedicated button for all those settings that you can instantly just, tap that button and change that particular setting instead of trying to dig a little bit. There's nothing that's sort of held back on the T4i as far as changing settings. There's just a little more work involved in finding them and changing them. So the overall controls and the size of the body, especially since I now have a mirrorless system with my Olympus EM10, I have a smaller camera I can take with me if I want a smaller camera. So moving to a little bit larger of a DSLR when I'm really serious about wanting to use a DSLR and the sort of the Swiss Army knife aspect of having a DSLR, that it just excels in every direction. Really nice to have this more pro level control that you get out of the 70D. So that's number 6. Feature number 7 that made me want to upgrade to the 70D is the micro focus adjustment. These cameras and lenses are all made on mass quantities on assembly lines. There is some variances between the different lenses, some variance between the different bodies and sensors. They're all pretty close, but the 70D allows you to do micro focus adjustment, which is being able to tweak the focusing points for each and every lens you own. You'll use like a focusing, which I just recently ordered, a focusing target that gives you a target to focus on, and then a scale that shows you how close the focus actually is to that point, which is really nice. So you can really go in and tweak each and every lens to make sure that the body knows exactly how that lens focuses and where it's perfectly focused at. So being able to tweak each and every lens and being able to make sure that the focusing point is dead on for each and every lens makes sure you're getting the best quality images, the sharpest images, you're getting the most amount of good keeper images, I could say. So that micro focus adjustment is something I've wanted. It's something that they didn't have in the 60D and they put back in the 70D. It's a really nice pro level kind of feature and something I'm definitely going to be taking advantage of. I have a pretty good collection of lenses at this point. I have 5 or 6 lenses I think that I own, so I'm going to be doing all the adjustments on all those and getting all those lenses dialed in. And once you get a lens dialed in on the camera, it saves the information it needs for that lens. So every time you put that lens on the camera, it says, oh, this is your 50mm 1.8. This is the focus, perfect focus for that lens, and it knows exactly how to do that. So that's a really nice feature, and I'm glad to have that, and definitely a good reason for me to upgrade to the 70D. Okay, number 8, the last reason I upgraded to the 70D is the amount of buffer in the camera. Not only does the 70D shoot more frames per second than the T4i, but it also can shoot more frames before it slows down. There is a point, the camera has a buffer inside of it that at a certain number of images, the camera will actually slow down because the buffer gets filled and it's trying to write those images from the buffer to the memory card. And you can have a fast memory card, but it's still going to fill up at some point, and you're going to be waiting for the camera to write those images from the buffer to the memory card. The 70D gets 2 to 3 times as many images before the buffer fills up. So, when you're comparing a camera that shoots 4 frames a second to one that shoots 7 frames per second, not only is this going to shoot longer, more seconds, but it's also going to take more images in those 2 to 3 seconds you have before the buffer fills up. I'll go ahead and give you a quick demonstration of that here. Okay, so here we have the T4i burst mode, raw shots only with the lens cap on, so we're just getting black images. This is the fastest it possibly can shoot and save images into the buffer, and you'll hear it slow down at one point, so let's go ahead and fire this one off. So you saw that after maybe 6 or 7 images, it slowed down there. That's when the buffer fills up, and you're only going to get maybe 1 shot per second, 1 shot every other second at that point. Very quickly the buffer fills up on the T4i, whereas with the 70D here, again shooting raw only with the lens cap on, this is the fastest it can possibly go with the same memory card in it. Alright, here is the 70D in burst mode. And there's the slowdown. So, you're shooting for a lot longer, you're getting a lot more images per second out of the 70D. Just definitely a very, very nice amount of buffer there Not sort of to the level of a real pro camera, but definitely a much needed improvement over the T4i. If you're trying to catch some action, you're just going to get a lot more images, and you're going to be able to capture a lot more a range of action in those in that same amount of time. Those were the 8 reasons that I upgraded to the Canon 70D over the T4i. The T4i has been a great this was my first DSLR. It's been a great first DSLR. I learned a lot while using it. I've really enjoyed using it. Until recently, I haven't felt it was holding me back. Some of the features I've talked about are reasons for me to upgrade. I feel that the T4i is just holding me back a bit, a little bit more difficult for me to use when I want to really dig in and change sort of these different aspects of photography. Glad to have the 70D now. It's been a really nice sort of gift for me. So I did say that there was one bonus feature that I've learned in the first week that I really love about the 70D. And that pertains to the silent shutter mode. I didn't think that was a big deal. It was a feature that it has. The T4i does not have a silent shutter. It just has, you get your shutter, and that's what you get. The 70D, the normal shutter sounds about the same as the T4i, but the 70D also features a silent shutter. So we can go ahead in here to our drive mode, silent shooting. So it's not necessarily a silent shutter, but it is a much more pleasant sound, a much softer sound. When you're shooting, particularly when you're shooting people and you're shooting at them with a big camera like this, they tend to get really self-conscious about it. So when you have a camera that's a little bit quieter, not necessarily such a sharp, loud noise, it's really nice to have a quieter, more pleasant sounding noise. I'm finding I love the silent shutter mode on the 70D just for a much nicer, pleasanter sound to be in. If you're in a quieter environment in general, you're not going to be stealthy. You're not going to take pictures without people knowing it, but it's going to be a much nicer, much more pleasant sound. So I really do like the silent shutter mode, and I'm finding I'm using that quite a bit when I'm just out, and about at an event, taking a shot here, a shot there of different things that I see. So those are the 8 reasons plus 1 that I upgraded to the Canon 70D. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them down below in the comments section about either one of these cameras, the T4i or the 70D. If you're thinking about upgrading, if you're thinking about jumping on one of these 70Ds yourself, since the price has come down quite a bit. As I said, I got a refurbished unit here, direct from Canon. It still has a 1-year warranty for $699 with a lens. So that's a really killer deal. That's actually less than I paid for this T4i, to be honest. A great camera, really enjoying using it. I'm looking forward to using it a lot more. Thank you for watching this video, this episode of Beer Geek Photography. Hope you enjoyed it. Cheers, happy shooting, enjoy your beer. See you again next time. Cheers.